Welcome to Insight Builder channel, large language model automators, Python experts, and my dear friends. Exploring the power of HuggingFace Datasets library. Understanding the dataset's significance is what we are going to discuss in this particular discussion. So before we start, we have to understand why we want to know or learn about datasets. So where the datasets comes into picture. So let us start at the very basic. Training an NLP model or any of the artificial intelligence or machine learning model, you'll start by designing the task the model is going to accomplish. So it starts with the task. Then you'll check if there is any existing model that can do this task. So for an example, let me go to the browser for a moment. I have a series of playlist where I discuss about the tasks the NLP models can perform. There is almost 11 different tasks the open source models can perform, and it is hosted in Hugging Face Hub. If you are new to Hugging Face Hub, I would suggest that visit this Hugging Face Hub, huggingface.co website, and get yourself a account first. And after that, you can start reviewing the datasets, you can start reviewing the models, you can start reviewing the documentation, and a lot more from this hub. Let me go to the presentation. The reason why I went to discuss about the tasks that is already possible in Hugging Face is that before you even want to train your model from the scratch, you need to check whether anyone else has already got a model. Most of the time, there is already an existing model. Then you learn the feasibility whether the existing model can be fine-tuned. So what is fine-tuning? Okay, so what is fine-tuning? So when we start thinking about these kinds of new jargons, so you might be new, you might be completely new to this particular discussion on NLP, training the models, and you may not be aware of all these concepts. So I would really suggest that you visit this particular playlist and go through the initial discussions, at least these two videos, and understand how to deploy the models, Hugging Face models to AWS, etc. You'll get some idea what is going on in this place. See, I provide the overview most of the time. I don't enter into the details unless it's extremely necessary. In these videos, I provide the overview of various tasks, the various models that is available, etc. But the discussion that we are having right now is about details. So this discussion is going to go into details about how to work with the datasets and how to use the dataset for improving or creating models and training models. So let us continue with this series of steps that I'm talking about. If no model is available and you check for a model, if there is if your particular task is new and if there is no any model, then you can actually think of doing a transfer learning. So what is a transfer learning? So transfer learning is kind of a process where you take a model that can perform a task. For an example, any task. It could be a classification, it could be a sentence generation, it could be any of these tasks, and you might want to change the output or change the task that the model can perform. So that is called as transfer learning. You can think about fine-tuning, you can think about transfer learnings as types of training that you can give to the model. And there is something also called as instruction tuning. So I have been discussing this in earlier videos. I'll be sharing those the links for those videos along with this discussion too. After you decide the task, decide the model, then you look for the dataset. So this is the significance that I was talking about for a dataset. We all have seen that machine learning, artificial intelligence, all this is possible today because there is a huge inflow of data from various avenues, whether it is your smartphone, whether it is your the social media that you are using, whether it's your own company activities. Everything can be converted to data set and it can be used for training a model. The point is how to have a data set that is easily usable for training your model. That is the key point. The datasets library in Hugging Face helps. So if the dataset is unavailable, then you need to build it from scratch and you have to format it for training. This is also one of the main point that the Hugging Face Hub helps you. And then you have to decide on the metrics, and then once the model is trained, then you have to decide on the metric that the model will be compared with another model. Then you deploy the model in the production and you still continue collecting the data. collecting the data is a continuous process. So we start by the task, use the data, create the model, deploy the model, then again start collecting the data to improve the model. This is a process that we keep on doing as a NLP trainer or a machine learning artificial intelligence practitioner. This is going to be a routine process that it's going to occur. So there is, when you're going to do something routine, it is better to automate it. Okay, but when you're going to have a data which is going to be collected from the wild, meaning from the customers who can give different types of data, who can work in different media, then it is better to have, instead of having a set automation script, it is better to have constructs, Python constructs, or various programming language constructs which can help you to manage the data. So data sets, the HuggingFace datasets is the library that helps you to do that. So let me share some of the challenges that the datasets library solves. So first of all, it makes easy. First and foremost, HuggingFace datasets makes it easily for you to share any kind of data, whether it's text, audio, or video. Inside the dataset, the data is ready for model training. So what I mean by this is the data inside the dataset instance is split into training, validation. So here you see this. It is already split into train, validation, test sets based on the data, how you upload the data. It is already done for you. And the data that is held inside the dataset instance. So when I say a dataset instance, I am talking about the HuggingFace dataset instance. Keep this in mind when I am talking about this, because this can get a little bit confusing that what dataset I am talking about. Here, whenever in this discussion, when I am saying dataset, it is about the HuggingFace instance, the library instance that I am talking about. The data that is held is a format arrow, and this format can work with very large datasets with zero copy reads. And the zero copy reads allows us to have no constraints because of the memory. The dataset also, the library dataset allows you to upload the dataset to central hub, HuggingFace hub, and from there also you can share it. Processing of the dataset is done using methods available inside the dataset instance itself. We will be delving deeper into this particular line item in this discussion. Each dataset has a configuration and associated metrics. As I was telling here, once the dataset is ready, you need to start using it for doing the training. You have to train the model, and in order to train the model, you need to have metrics on which the model will be trained and compared. For that, all these metrics are attached with the dataset itself. It's not a simple dataset. It's going to have a lot of power with it. And finally, dataset can be converted to transform TensorFlow, PyTorch, JAX format by just using a single easy format method. Okay, so here we are not worried about the size of the dataset. I am talking about large datasets here, but I am not mentioning any size. But now let us come to the reality. When you are going to have a huge dataset, this dataset has to be first of all loaded to your local memory. That is first challenge. For that, the dataset library just uses a simple loading method called as load dataset. This load dataset, and we directly get the dataset to our local machine or wherever you're working. That is something called as a concept called as cache, which keeps the dataset in the memory and does all the transformation there itself. It is not brought to your RAM, random access memory. But even then, there could be dataset which is very huge, like 20 GB or 50 GB or large. At that time, we can actually make the dataset, the simple dataset instance, into iterable dataset. So what I mean to say is, once inside the dataset library, that is execution environment, there are two kinds of instances. One is the regular dataset instance, and the another is the iterable dataset instance. So there are two instances. And the dataset are created using dictionaries, and these can be loaded entirely or progressively. So there are multiple ways to load the dataset also from local or remote locations. As I was explaining, the regular dataset supports eager processing, while the iterable dataset supports lazy processing. What I mean by lazy processing is very similar to the lazy evaluation done by Spark big data related concepts. Only when the data set is accessed, the processing starts. So till then, the lazy processing does not execute the transformations. This is a key point when you're going to work with huge data sets. We will be seeing a couple of examples of such data sets also. So stay tuned for that. In order to convert a regular dataset to iterable dataset, there is a method called as toIterable dataset. I mean, the HuggingFace, the developer team has thought out all the challenges that that engineer, the NLP or a machine learning or artificial engineer might face, and they've created the constructs, primitives, Python primitives, and the respective methods to make the life easy. So these are the the challenges that the dataset solves and how the big datasets are handled by the HuggingFace datasets. The reason why I'm introducing this currently, why I'm introducing the dataset also, we have discussed where the dataset is primarily required. So we have seen all these things. So this particular discussion is the starting point of a series of discussion where we think about the dataset and then move on to training the dataset, and then we think about evaluating the dataset. Why I'm giving such a brief introduction? So the entire discussion will be around 20 to 30 minutes overall. So most of my videos are of that duration, and getting an overview, getting to know the entire challenge, the solution, and the way the solution is implemented is more important for anyone who is learning a new tech. This is the reason why I'm presenting this video. I hope that you like this content. Do leave a like and share it with others, and subscribe with my channel for further updates on similar kind of libraries, similar kind of discussion on large language models and artificial intelligence models, and also regular Python ecosystem related discussions. Continuing with our big data, continuing with our datasets discussion. The next step is there is something called as features in datasets. So these features are kind of a backbone of the data that you are going to load inside the HuggingFace Datasets library. Feature contains a high-level information about the data. It has lots of information. It's like the schema that we generate for our database tables. So if you are from the database background, if you have created tables, if you have worked in Spark big data environment, then schema is the basic step that you generate before you start loading the data. Same way, in case of HuggingFace datasets, the schema is given a new name. It is called as features, and this feature can be accessed in multiple ways. And the features also has multiple parameters like number of classes, names, etc. I'm not going to delve deeper into the details of this. I would request you guys to create a dataset. I will be showing you how to do that in a couple of minutes, and then use these methods on those classes or instances and understand how the things are working. The important metadata one you have to always think about is the amount of data that is split into test, validation, and train, the description of the dataset, the homepage of the dataset, the citation, and the license. These, especially the license. Currently, you must be aware of the challenges that is revolving around the large language models. How the large language models are trained decides on whether the large language model can be used as a commercial or not. So if the dataset is not commercial, then you cannot use this model for commercial purposes. And if the model is going to be trained on your specific dataset, it is going to be difficult for others to use it also. So consider the dataset itself as an IP. And on top of it, the model that is generated from your dataset is going to be attached with the dataset that it created. So large language model by itself is also an IP. So keep this in mind, and use the reason why I'm insisting that the importance of dataset must be clear right now. Our discussion in this particular video is going to revolve around processing the dataset that is already available. I'm not going to talk about uploading your own dataset or working with evaluation or working with training. This is purely going to think about we are going to dive into the existing datasets. So there are almost 33,000 different datasets already available in HuggingFace Hub. we'll be looking at it in a couple of minutes. And these datasets range from sub 1 MB to in petabytes. So it goes to a very huge size also. To my knowledge, it's not petabytes. I over exaggerated. It should be in gigabytes. So maximum 100 GB, I suppose. Why I'm telling you all this thing is that depending on how you are going to train your model, how you are going to ingest the data into the model, you have to understand working with the dataset in a more in detailed fashion. And processing methods are more important for you. Here we see the load dataset I already introduced. There are multiple ways to load the dataset into the execution environment, and then there are varieties of processing operations. You must have come across libraries like Pandas. You must have seen libraries like PySpark. You must have worked with Spark related, or you might be coming from JavaScript domain. You must have come across libraries like D3. So all this data processing activity is I shouldn't say restricted. It is given in a concise fashion using these methods like sort, shuffle, select, split, shard, rename, remove, filter. So these are all very simple looking methods but extremely powerful when they are used on the datasets. So what we are going to do next is this particular Jupyter Notebook link that I've shared here will be also given to you over the YouTube description. You can take a look at that and you can use it for practicing. We will be loading the dataset, the already existing dataset, and then we will start working on these methods. So that will be the next couple of minutes. I will be explaining that. With that said, let us go to the browser. And I already showed this discussion. I already shared the playlist. Take a look at the playlist. This playlist covers a lot of ground around the large language model ecosystem. So like the summon libraries that supercharge your NLP journey, the TXT-AI, I give a very deep introduction to TXT-AI library, one of the key libraries that can help you to manage the datasets, process the datasets, and fine tune the models. A lot of things can be done with TXT-AI. This particular playlist is primarily to show what is available in open source, what can be done using open source models. So open source data sets, open source models, open source libraries, etc. So that is the primary purpose of this this playlist. And coming to HuggingFace Hub. So if you go to HuggingFace Hub, there are you will be having a particular homepage like this, and in the homepage you will have, I have actually zoomed in, so that's why you are seeing a different profile here. The design, the page design here, if you see, you can actually look at the models, you can look at the dataset spaces. The two things that you need to think about in this discussion is the documentation, that is docs, and the datasets. I have clicked on the datasets and I have got all these datasets here. By default, the datasets are sorted on most downloaded. So Alan AI's NLLB dataset has been downloaded almost 1.95 million times. That means this particular dataset is used by a lot of people for training, for learning, for working with different dataset. And what we see is that once you click on this particular dataset, and if you go to the files, you will see the files that is available inside. And then and there you will be wondering that, Kamal, the file size looks only 5.505 MB, but this particular dataset looks very important. So is this the right size? So for that, you have to go to the dataset card, and this dataset card will provide you the necessary information about the data that is available. And you right here you will see it is a 450 GB dataset. Right, this is what I was talking about. Understanding the datasets is more important, and then processing part comes in. The HuggingFace Hub provides a very good ecosystem around the datasets. So take a look. If you have not come across HuggingFace Hub, sign up and then take a look at the website and see what are available. You will see the community discussions here, what is going on. You can see the files, you can see the dataset card, etc. Anyway, so this is basically an introduction that I'm giving about the dataset, how to find the details about it. And datasets by default is a GitHub repo. It is very similar to the GitHub that you use for your regular if you have not if you have come across GitHub earlier, you might be using it in your organization, or you might be using it the open source GitHub also. Hugging Face has its own GitHub repo. So this repo and the regular GitHub is not linked. So don't get confused. So Hugging Face Hub has its own separate repo server, right? And that is where the datasets are located. And since the datasets are quite huge, they use Git LFS. When you are going to use when you are going to pull the data from any of these repo, ensure that you install Git LFS in your environment and do the pull accordingly. The environment that we will be using is collab environment. So collab environment, we will not be using the git pull method. So we'll be using load dataset method, right? So these are the things that you will slowly get introduced to. Okay, so whatever I'm talking about, I have got introduced to all these things, and I'm giving you the information ahead of time. So keep so a lot of things I may not have put in the presentation, because it may not actually match with the discussion that I'm going to do. But as the discussion, when I'm providing the oral information, I add the experiences, the challenges I faced as a key points. Let us go back to the browser and let's start working on the Collab notebook. To start working with the datasets, all you need to do is pip install. This dev/null is going to just ensure that you don't get the output from this pip installation. That will avoid cluttering the workspace. And then the first class or the construct I'm going to use is load dataset, and I'm going to load a dataset called a squad. So before I load the dataset, this particular dataset, I want you guys to look at this. What is squad? You have to understand that, right? So let me first of all go to Hugging Face Hub, and I am going to type squad. Once I type squad, you'll see that I'm getting this option. Under dataset, there is squad v2, squad adversarial. So click on squad. That is what I'm going to load, correct? If you click on squad, it will take you to the squad dataset. You see this particular format here. This is called as dataset, and this particular squad is especially useful for question answering. So you can see the task that this particular dataset can be used. As I was telling you, that you need to decide on the task first, and also there is a subtask that is can be used. And if you scroll down here, you will see the models that is trained on this particular dataset. This is actually gives you the understanding why I am talking about all this task, all these steps. Now you must be getting a picture that why not this. I was talking about this, right? Why I spoke about the task first, then why I spoke about existing model, transfer learning, fine tuning, all those stuff. So the reason is that when you are going to work with open source models, you may not require to do everything by yourself. You can stand on the shoulders of the giants. So giants like a Stanford question answering dataset can help you out. The point here is that you must be aware of how to use these datasets and how to work with them in a constructive fashion. That is the intention of discussing these things. Right, and this particular dataset is pretty small, so it is having only 3.35 MB of data. It's small, but it has sufficient firepower to train a model. It doesn't mean that it is a small model that it will not be able to train a AI model or large language model. It depends on how you use the model and how you frame the training and the validation and the testing data inside the dataset. All these things are important. With that said, let me go to go back to the Collab notebook where I am going to load the dataset. All I need to do is just call load dataset with the dataset name, the same name that I am providing here. That is all I need to do. Just a minute, sorry about that. All I need to do is call that, and the moment I call it, this particular variable will now be a dataset dictionary instance. So let me show you the type of this. Let me run a type on squad dataset, and you'll see the type of the object. So it says that it is datasets.dataset dict object. You see this, right? This is a dictionary. It's a kind of a dictionary object, which is part of the dataset library. You can use the regular slicing and indexing options, And inside the squad dataset, okay, what you have to do is, here I'm doing a different way. All you need to do is you have to just, instead of using type, if you try to execute it directly, you will be surprised to find a different output. So if you execute it like this, you will not get the data inside the dataset. You will get this particular features information. So this is what I was calling about features. So let us go back to the presentation for a moment. As this particular discussion presentation explains, features, data set features are the backbone of the data. So it provides the high level information. It provides the names, types. It's like the schema, right? Let us go back here to the, so you see the schema. So you see the train and validation split. You see the number of rows. You see the column names. You get the overall picture about the squad dataset. The same thing that you get here, but you see the benefit, right? You, by looking at this table, you may not actually understand what is going on, but looking at this schema, looking at this feature schema, then you can understand everything that is available inside the dataset. That is the benefit of it. Now, as usual, by using the regular Python indexing and dictionary way of accessing the data, you can use the train. So you can take the train key and take the look at the first element by using the 0 index. You can also use slicing, also 0 to, if I say 0 to 5, I will get the data of the first five train elements. Now this is where you will see the difference. So you see here, when I am calling for 0 to 5 train the elements, the ID is getting clubbed into a single value. The title is getting clubbed into a single value. The context is getting clubbed. So this is a very different way of looking at the dictionary, right? Initially, when I was learning dataset library, I was thinking, okay, if I'm going to call for 0 to 5 elements, I will get a list of dictionaries. But no, here the dictionary that comes out is totally different. So this is something that you have to experiment by looking at the data set. Looking at the data itself. Okay. And then we have the dataset builder. This is a method that you can use for building a new dataset also. So here, if you use the dataset builder, you can take a look at the info or the description of the squad dataset. So whatever you find here, if you go down here, you get this information, right? You can get it here also. So this is something that I want you guys to understand very clearly, like using info to get the features. And then we can get the split names. Using the split names function, you can get the details, that is train and validation, that you already saw here, correct? And going further down, we can take a look at the config names. Okay, now configurations, metrics, evaluation, library, none of these things I'm going to touch here. But just be aware that the data set that you look at here is not just a simple container for the data. It is more than a simple container. It contains the features, the schema as I told, it contains the data, the actual raw data itself, and also it contains the metrics, the evaluation metrics that we will be discussing in a couple of next videos. So it is all linked together in a single package. So each of this data is linked like that, and you will see all the information available here. Okay, and also this information is propagated inside the dataset instance also. So you see the source here, you will see to what kind of modeling it can be used, what kind of task it can be used, and how this model was created in the first place. Let us go back to the Colab notebook. We have seen all these things, and now if you want to only load a specific part of the dataset, you can do it by using the split. And also there are other ways to access the dataset. So you can take a look at these things, which is very similar to a regular Python process. You see the difference here. You can do it two ways. Either you can first use the question and then call the index, or you can use the index and then call the question. So there are differences in the time it takes for these two processes. So you need to realize that also when you are going to work with the dataset instance. Let us go back to the presentation for a moment. And as I was explaining, so the features, since this is the backbone of the data, till now we mainly concentrated on the features, how to look at the features, how to get the details of the columns, etc. Next, what you are going to do is we are going to process the dataset. This is where various methods like this sorting, shuffling, renaming, mapping, concatenating, all these things will come. So our next part of the discussion is primarily going to concentrate in that, in this particular to this particular slide. Let us go back to the browser. So I'll be just breezing through this set of methods and classes. Only the important places I'll be explaining in detail. Okay. In case of the sorts, shuffle, select, split, and shard, the most important methods is going to be select, because you can select the number of rows that you want on which rows you want. And the second is how you are going to shard it. So sorting, shuffling is very simple activities that you can regularly do in all the other data structures. So you can test it out how it works. Once you select, so here is a select method where you give the indexes and you can select the respective indexes. And then again, there is something called as filtering. So we will be getting into that in a moment. In case of filtering, what happens is it's similar to selecting, but we filter it based on the condition. So here what I am telling, the condition is that the context, that is this context, value of the context should be more than the length of the value of the context should be more than 1000 elements. Then only the data will be, that is how the data will be filtered. So the moment I filter it, you see the length of the overall data is 15,123. But take a look at the regular data. If you take a look at the regular data, let me actually do this. Let me wait a minute. Let me see. Oh yeah, I have taken actually started squad. I've taken squad train. Okay, so this is squad train. So I need to check the length of squad train. Let me do that. If I execute this, you'll see the exact length of the squad train. Okay, so you see that it is throwing an error. The reason is I have not executed the squad train, what is it called? Squad train variable. So let me actually go up and let me execute the dataset. So let me execute this. Let me load the dataset into squad train. So this is where it is getting loaded. Now if I go down and if I execute the squad train length, I should be able to get the length of the squad train. It is 87,599 rows, but only 15,000 rows has the context that is having the length more than 10,000. So that is what I have done. And you can again change the size of the test and train in this particular data set also. You see how simple it is. You have to just call train test split and give the test size, it will automatically modify. Okay, and if you want to shard it, you have to just say number of shards and it will shard it into smaller data sets. So these things you can experiment it yourself. The most important point I wanted to reiterate is how to split it, how to select it, and how to filter it. So these three things you have to practice further. Okay, going further down, I am going to start working on the next important processing option. We might want to create new columns with new information, and you must have already worked with the various other data structures like list, data frames, arrays, etc. And in any of these data structures, if there is a column, you can add these two columns, you can subtract, you can do operations on it. And most of the time the libraries like pandas or PySpark have the specific functions that can do the operations. In case of dataset, there is a blanket function called as map. This map actually takes the regular Python function. Any of the function that you define can be passed as the map. It's very similar to MapReduce that we use in big data. It is very similar to that, but only thing is we are not going to use any reducing function here. We are just going to use the mapping option only. So this is all I'm explaining for the introduction purpose, but all the functions are self-explanatory. If you know about Python, if you have worked with Python functions, you will understand what is going on right away. So here I am mapping this particular function, and once I map it, you will see the sentence has got a new context. So the context has got this new word, the new context that is attached here. Okay, and it is attached to a column called a sentence. So this is a totally new column that is getting created. So you can see it here. If I just use with sentence, if I execute this particular cell, you'll see that there is a new column itself altogether. Okay, so the reason why it is not coming is I have not executed the function again. So let me execute this. You will see that it maps. So once I try to map it, what is the challenge here? Okay, let me do that again. Why it is saying that it is not executed? Okay, let me execute this. Has line 50. Okay, here you will see, okay, here we are not able to see the exact filtering option, but in the map you will be seeing the data set going through all the steps. So let me execute this right now, and in a moment you will see you saw that it actually goes through all the rows inside the data set, and then it comes up with the modification. So you see there is an additional column now called as sentence 1. The same way you can remove the columns also. So in the bottom we will be discussing about remove column. So there are other ways to chunk the example. So this is another one additional function that is getting mapped. You can execute this and see how it works. So you can actually remove the columns also. So like using this additional parameter that you pass to the map, and it goes on. So this is the basic introduction that I wanted to provide on the sort, shuffle, select, the rename, remove, and map methods. Next, what we are going to do is we are going to see how to concatenate and how to set the format and how to export the dataset. Let us go to the browser. Now we have seen how to work with the steps, but in order to concatenate the data sets, we need to again work with the actual library itself. And when you are going to work with larger data set, ensure that you install Apache Beam. So once you install Apache Beam, then you can work with very big models, that very big data sets that crosses GBs, like 10 GB, 20 GB. Here I am going to work with the Wikipedia dataset with the configuration that is 2022 March 1st. So this is a new configuration, and this has almost 20 GB of data. In order to load this data, we need to have Apache Beam library installed. Then only it will get loaded, or it will throw an error when you try to load it. So both of this data set, book corpus and Wikipedia, is getting loaded, and then you can remove the columns. So whichever columns you don't want, you can remove it, and then you have to just call concatenate datasets. So this will concatenate the dataset. And you might be wondering that how to create a dataset from scratch. So it is very simple. All you need to do is use the dataset class, and you have to say from dictionary or from pandas data frame or from whichever data structure. So you have to just call it, and by default the dataset will get created. And then you can use just save to disk, and the particular dataset will get saved to the disk. You can also use the various other to Parquet, to CSV, to SQL, and all those methods to save it also. So what this particular introduction currently must have brought you to a complete overview, must have given you the complete overview about the dataset library. This is just the 25% of the overview. Only we have seen the processing part of the dataset. We are yet to see how to use this dataset for training the model. So in case of Hugging Face Up, there is a library called as transformers, vision transformers, audio transformers. There are different transformers library for working with different medias. And this transformer library can take this dataset that we discussed right now, use it in the model, and it can fine tune, it can do transform learning, and all these things can be done inside the Colab environment itself. That is the main reason why I wanted to introduce the dataset library in first place. And once you understand how the dataset library works, then you can move on to the next step of trying to use it for training the model. Right, this can happen only when you can work with the dataset that is available with you, correct? That is the reason of introducing this dataset library first. In the next video, stay tuned for that. I will be preparing for the transformers library and providing a similar kind of overview where the knowledge that you have gained here will be useful for loading the data into the training session and training a new model. and once you train the model, then you will have to evaluate it. That will be also a separate module. So by spending 45 minutes of your time, you can understand the entire process of the training an NLP model. That is the overarching view that I am trying to create with this, couple of videos, in the next couple of videos. I hope that you like this content. Do leave a like and share it with others. And most important point is subscribe to my channel for further updates directly reaching to your YouTube dashboard. And I am going to end this particular video with most important 4 words. That is practice, 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 practice. See you guys. Have a great time.